Even with an obviously heavier lens, the Sony is lighter than the Canon. Hey, what's up you guys? Nick here. For those of you new to my channel, my name is Nick. I'm a professional photographer. I've been taking photos professionally for the last 5 years or so, though I've had a camera in my hands for the last 17 ever since high school. And today we're finally doing the video, the Canon R6 versus the Sony A7 III. Now there are rules in this video. There are rules in this Versa. Both these cameras are owned by Nick Del Duca, and today we're gonna be taking photos with two different lenses. We're gonna be using a 50mm prime on both cameras. This is a Canon 50mm f1.8. This is a Samyang 50mm f1.4. Now I can only use this lens at the very least 1.8. I cannot go below 1.8. We have to match them lens for lens. The other lens we're going to be using is the 85mm. Again, the Sony is going to be using a Samyang f1.4 85mm, and for the Canon, we have an EF mount 85mm 1.4, so we'll be able to take photos with those both at 1.4, and we're going to put these head to head to see whether I'll buy the Canon R6 or the Sony A7 III. All right, you guys, so we're gonna start out with the Sony A7 III with the Samyang 50mm f1.4. We're gonna be taking photos at f1.8 because it isn't fair to compete an f1.4 versus a f1.8 because everyone knows the f1.4 is better. So we're gonna drop down to 1.8. Get the show on the road. We'll do the warm-up just like we did at the park where I just had you change poses every time you hear the shutter click. And that's a really good warm-up to get started with. So this lens isn't as zoomed in as the last one we used. So you're about right here up. Now I'll back up. Okay, now we've got full body.
She wants to run away from small town USA. Her feet are so itchy.
My GoPro is getting nothing but wall right now.
She don't wanna be no one. Caution, little girl, don't run.
That's actually the exact pose I was about to call out, so that's perfect. So I'm gonna lean up against the wall. So we're gonna switch over to the Canon and kind of do the same exact sequence that we just did. Why can't I put my muzzle back on correctly? So now we're gonna do the exact same thing with the Canon R6. We're gonna get an idea of how these feel in my hand. The images they take and kind of the balance. So far I can already tell you this is slightly heavier than the A7 III is, even with the smaller Canon lens compared to that f1.4. It's kind of the same thing.
Living from paycheck to rain check.
Very good eye tracking autofocus. Get against the wall.
So currently showing just JPEGs out of the back, I can honestly say that I really like the Canon's colors a lot more and the straight JPEG out of the back. We're really gonna have to see what the raw images look like and how they come out after editing.
Stuck on the typewriter, never was a fighter, held back for dollars and cents.
So we picked another way. We got more dynamic lighting here. We've got a mix of the sun and the shade. We're gonna see what we can capture with the Canon before switching over to the Sony.
Tied down by hometown folks, they never
Yeah, the straight JPEGs that come out of the Canon are really, really nice. I've been using the Sony for a few weeks now, and the JPEGs straight out of the Sony aren't as impressive, but I can get similar results once editing. It's really gonna come down to editing, how it feels in my hand, and the 85mm is really gonna be the decider here. Now, I have smaller hands, and one thing I wanna point out right now is this camera fits my hand so much better than the Canon R6 does. Yes, the colors coming out of the Canon are impressive, but I don't know if I could do a full day of photography at a wedding or some kind of event holding something that has my hand stretched out like this in comparison to the Sony here. So we're gonna do the same dynamic range test with the Sony. Again, we're using a Samyang 50mm f1.4. We're currently at f1.8, same settings that we used on the Canon. So we're gonna switch now to the 85mm. There's one shot in particular I'm gonna take with both cameras. It's one of my favorite photos to get in most of the downtown photo sessions that we've done down here in videos. I've always gotten this one shot, and I really wanna see how it turns out. So as you can see, we have the Samyang 85mm f1.4. The Canon that we have is also an f1.4, so we're going to be taking photos at f1.4 with both of these lenses. Now this one is considerably smaller than the Canon is, and that's because the Canon is an EF mount requiring an adapter. The actual 85mm f1.4 or f1.8 for the RF mount is extremely expensive. $3,000? It's $3,000. Nick just informed me that. He just put 3 fingers up. Let's see what we can get. Now, with this pose, I want you to go slightly inside the door frame, and I'll have you put one hand on each side of the wall, just like that, perfectly. And then if you want to kick 1 foot back, so now we're going to replicate that exact same shot with the Canon 85mm. Before we do that, we're going to switch the lenses, and I'm going to show you the size difference between the two of them.
Hail, hail, cabby, no more Hail Marys as it rains and hails down. Big city lights like away, I'm no runaway, run away from home.
Now, as you can see, even without the adapter is this bit right here. That is a much larger lens. They're both f1.4, they're both 85mm. This one though, extremely front heavy. Yeah, the color's straight out of the Canon. Again, those JPEGs, the Canon JPEGs look a lot better than the Sony JPEGs. Really, it's gonna come down to editing. We're gonna have to set these side by side at editing. The problems I'm having with this currently is the size. My hand barely fits on it as it is. It's really, really big. With this adapter, any good lens is gonna have a really front heavy. As I'm holding it, again, I'm feeling a strain right here. I would not wanna take this out on an all day photo session. So those are the issues I'm having right now, is the ergonomics for my smaller hands aren't great. The pros though is it definitely has better out-of-camera JPEG compared to the Sony, though the Sony fits in my hand better. And as we discussed in the last video, which I'm going to link right up there, the Sony has a lot bigger of a lens selection. So we're just going to have to keep taking photos with these and see exactly where it goes from here. All right, Aaliyah, if you want to come walking down the alley.
Starting from where?
Start at the manhole cover.
Try to bury me, but I don't do what I'm told. Can't break me, and even if you do, I'll fix myself with bone super glue. Underneath, you're just a skeleton. Underneath, you're just a skeleton.
I'm a little disappointed in that dynamic range and the way the skin tone came out with these ones. We'll have to see how it looks when we edit it. Let's grab the Sony and do the same thing. Okay, so let me get this guy set up. All right, same thing if you just want to come walking towards me. See, like, that one looks so, like, whitewashed, and your eyes are, like, black. Like, that dynamic range. Like, a high fashion-wise, like, if there was more glare on this one, that'd be a great high fashion photo. But it's missing the glare because it looks like flat white, so really we're going to have to see what it looks like in a computer. Look again, we once again switched places, and that's because I wanted a place with a little bit more shade, but I wanted a lot more color dynamic. We have blacks, the white dress, the two different styles of gray, the kind of light white, and then the red brick, and we're really gonna see what we can capture with all of that with the Sony here as well as the Canon R6. So let's see what we can capture here in the alley. So just below your knees. So we're going to swap over to the Canon, kind of do the same thing. Again, we're using 85mm f1.4s. I'm kind of dreading picking up that chonky boy.
Underneath the fucking skeletons, say goodbye because I love.
Why won't it grab onto your eye? That's annoying. That's the first time I've had that issue.
I'm so done.
There we go, it finally found your eye. That's weird, I didn't have that issue with the Sony.
All our bones look the same, and we all lose our names, walking in place. Someday we'll sleep in on my grave.
I can tell you one thing I hate about both cameras. And the one thing I have, why won't it grab onto your eye? That's annoying, that's the first time I've had that issue. The one thing that I don't like about either camera, simply put, is that if I put my hand over the eye sensor, it cuts out my back screen, which makes it difficult when I want to pick point focus. And then the autofocus, I was having issues with the autofocus, mad issues with the autofocus. It was either autofocusing really slowly or it wouldn't catch her eye when her eye was obviously there. And that's actually really annoying because the next test is the hair flip. Down for a hair flip? Perfect. I probably should have asked you that before I announced that. 3, 2, 1. All right. 3, 2, 1.
Stop counting the days, nothing left to say.
You ready? All right, 3, 2, 1. Oh, they're exactly the same. You ready? All right, 3, 2, 1. Oh, they're exactly the same.
I'm crumbling into the dust. I'll die if I must.
It's exactly the same.
Next world or bust.
We're gonna do some poses in front of the red door. We're gonna do it quick because I don't want them. Not yet. Let me get it set up. Let me. The left side. That side. Sorry. Yep. Ready? Okay. Sorry. Yep. Ready? Okay. I feel like Clint Eastwood. Okay.
You're missing something inside. I'll lend you my spine. I got plenty of time.
Recording? Yep. So, since I kind of have a slight issue with the way that reds and oranges are displayed on Canon, we're gonna play along on this wall real quick before we make it back to the studio.
Now look into me. I'll tell you what you look like if you want me to.
I am again having problems with it grabbing your eye. That is really unacceptable.
I like the reds a lot more from the Sony than I do the Canon. I mean, it'll be different after we edit them, but... Hey, those came out in focus because this one will actually focus on the eye. I couldn't resist, you guys looked adorable. So now we're gonna head back and we're gonna talk about the two cameras. So you made it this far in the video, you know that we just got done with our portrait session with Aaliyah. And we used both cameras, the exact same lenses or the equivalents for each one, 50mm f1.8 on the Canon R6, 50mm f1.4, minimum use at 1.8 to make it fair on the Sony, and 85mm f1.4s on each camera. So what are my thoughts after going head-to-head like that? Well, my thoughts is I think that both cameras deliver, and they deliver in different ways. The Sony did a lot better in cloudy areas or shady areas. Its color profile was a lot cooler, which is kind of my style of photography, and the autofocus worked absolutely perfect. The other thing I liked about the Sony was how light it was. So the Sony is a smaller and lighter camera. Now the R6 was very user-friendly. Overall, the menus were very intuitive. Using it was very intuitive. It was a little bulky in my hand, which I could see becoming a problem for longer events, you know, like a wedding or a quinceañera or something like that. but overall, I did enjoy using it. The Canon performed a lot better in straight sun. Now, the autofocus on the Canon, I had a few issues with, and I'm gonna have to mull over this a little bit before I make my final decision on which camera I'm going to get, because the color profiles after editing the photos, because I have already edited all the photos, the Sonys took a little bit longer to get presets made, but bulk editing was, it's quick. I mean, it took a little bit longer. I mean, instead of the 2.5 minutes it took to get a preset set for the Canon, it took about 3.5 minutes to get a preset set for the Sony. But overall, it wasn't too bad. Now, the Canon R6, the autofocus was disappointing. The autofocus wouldn't grab Aaliyah's eye at 15 feet. I struggled with that. It didn't autofocus very quickly, and I just was having a lot of issues with it with the 85mm f1.4 on that adapter. Now, that lens is sharp. Canon glass has always been extremely sharp. Canons have always been extremely user-friendly. They're great cameras. I don't have a whole lot against either the Sony or the R6. What it's really going to come down to, I think, is the ergonomics and my own niche of photography. Later on this week, I'm going to drop a video on which camera that I eventually choose, as well as why I chose it. I have a lot to think about and a lot of things that I need to go over before making this decision, because both cameras are relatively expensive and it's going to be a huge investment, not just for me, but for the channel. So I want to make sure that I get the best camera for our style of photography, our style of conversation, and the kind of videos that we make, because the kind of videos we make actually match up really well for the kind of photography I do anyways. It crosses over almost completely, so that is not going to be a big deal. We just got to figure out which camera we're going to end up with, and I'll release a video on why. So I want to thank you all for joining me on this video today. I hope you guys enjoyed the portrait session, the little bit of banter between Nick, I, and Aaliyah, as well as my notes here at the very end on the pros and cons of each camera going into the session, and I will have a video later this week discussing which camera that I'm eventually going to get. So please like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know your arguments down below. Which one fits your style of photography? What one did you like better? And I will catch you all on the flip side. Bye.